The tests that were done by Tesla in 1899 to 1900 in Colorado Springs verified the fact that the use of wireless was actually possible.
The evacuation order was clear. 60 researchers fled a high-tech lab, not from a modern experiment, but from an 80-year-old antique. A massive copper coil, built by Nikola Tesla himself, had just come to life.
He was able to establish that he could transmit electrical power over great distances.
It was found in a sealed crate, untouched for decades. When a technician aimed a simple scanner at it, the coil erupted. 2 million volts of raw power. Lightning filled the room. The device was screaming. But what's truly baffling? The team's instruments show the power wasn't coming from the device. It was coming through it. The label said, "Do not open." It all started in March of 2025. Deep in the climate-controlled archives beneath a major New York university, a cataloging team was working through a backlog. You see, after Nikola Tesla passed away in 1943, his estate was seized. Most of his papers are well known, but some items, boxes of hardware, were stored and, to put it mildly, forgotten. This crate was one of them. It was a simple wooden box, sealed with wax. The label, written in faded ink, read, "Estate of N. Tesla. High voltage apparatus. Do not open." It wasn't massive, maybe 4 feet wide and 8 feet tall, but it was heavy. You see, the university had been doing a full inventory of its archives, a process that had been put off for decades. This crate was just one of hundreds, but the label made it special. For 82 years, nobody had touched it. The team, led by Dr. Eris Thorne, a specialist in electrical engineering, moved the crate to a shielded high-voltage lab. They were expecting a historical curiosity, maybe a broken part from his famous lab. They pried open the lid. Inside, wrapped in thick, oiled canvas, was a stunning piece of hardware. It was a copper coil as tall as a man. Thousands of turns of thin wire wrapped with perfect precision. A brass nameplate at the base was stamped with just 2 words: Warden Cliff. This wasn't just a part. It was a prototype. A high-frequency resonator, likely one of Tesla's final designs from the 1920s. It was beautiful, and it looked brand new. The copper shone. The ceramic insulators were perfect. The team was speechless. This was a missing link in high-voltage history. Dr. Thorne decided to run a simple, non-invasive test. The plan was not to power it on. The plan was just to see what its properties were. He asked a grad student, Ben, to hook up a modern spectrum analyzer. This tool is standard. It sends out a tiny, tiny signal, just 10 milliwatts, less power than a Christmas light. It then listens to how the device responds. This is how they map the resonance curve, to find out what note the circuit sings at. It's harmless. It's done every day. Ben connected the analyzer. He stood back at the control console. Dr. Thorne and 2 other researchers stood behind a safety shield, mostly as a formality. Ben started the sweep. The analyzer began sending its tiny signal, sweeping up through the frequencies. For 10 seconds, nothing. The coil just sat there. Then, the analyzer's signal crossed 700 kilohertz. It started with a sound, a high-pitched whine that rose to a deafening scream. In an instant, the air in the lab turned electric. A blinding blue-white arc, a bolt of literal lightning, exploded from the top of the coil. It didn't just spark, it jumped. The arc spanned 12 feet, slamming into a metal storage shelf. The shelf glowed white-hot. High-voltage detectors mounted on the walls tripped instantly. Red strobe lights flooded the room. An automated voice blasted over the intercom. "Evacuate. High-voltage containment failure. Evacuate." Alarms cascaded through 3 floors. 60 people, researchers, students, and staff, ran for the corridors. The evacuation order was automatic. No human pushed a button. The system detected 2 million volts of uncontrolled energy and locked the lab down. The team made it out in under 4 minutes. No one was harmed. But here's the thing. The coil was still going. Through the safety glass, they could see it pulsing, the arc still roaring. Ben had hit the elimination switch on his analyzer. It was off, but the coil was still drawing energy. Dr. Thorne realized what was happening. He ran to the sub-basement breaker room and pulled the main feeds for the entire lab wing. He cut all power to the room. The arc finally died. The screaming stopped. Silence. Then, the questions. Hundreds of them. How does an 80-year-old unplugged device generate a 2 million volt surge? Where did the energy come from? And why did a 10 milliwatt signal trigger a megavolt catastrophe? The team was safe. But one question remained. Where did the power come from? Why this wasn't an accident? Many people are crazy about Tesla. They might say this was some hidden battery, or that Tesla had found a secret to free energy. But the answer isn't a ghost. It's physics. Chilling, powerful, and very real physics. It's all about a single word: resonance. Think of a child on a swing. You can't just shove the swing hard one time. It doesn't work. To get the child to go high, you have to give small, gentle pushes. But you have to push at the exact right moment, and this is the key. You have to match the swing's natural rhythm. When your pushes match that rhythm, each small push adds to the last one. The swing goes higher and higher and higher. You are stacking energy. The same thing happens with sound. A trained opera singer can shatter a wine glass. They don't do it with volume. They do it by finding the exact musical note that matches the natural resonant frequency of the glass. When they sing that one perfect note, the vibrations in the glass stack. Each one adds to the last. The glass vibrates more and more violently until it just explodes. That Tesla coil in the lab? It was a 12-foot tall crystal wine glass. And Ben's spectrum analyzer? It was the opera singer. You see, the analyzer was singing thousands of different notes, one after another, very quickly. It was hunting for the coil's frequency, and at 700 kilohertz, it found it. The note was a perfect match. But what many overlooked is just how perfect this wine glass was. Tesla was a master. He designed his coils to have an insanely high Q factor. That's an engineering term. But to put it mildly, it's the most important number in this whole story. A cheap, poorly made circuit has a low Q factor. You put energy in, and it leaks out all over the place as heat. It's a leaky bucket. But a high Q factor circuit? That's a different beast entirely. It's an insulated thermos. Once the energy is in, it stays in. It has nowhere to go but up. So, when the analyzer's tiny 10 milliwatt signal hit that perfect note, the coil didn't just vibrate a little. It rang. The first push was tiny. The second push, a fraction of a second later, added to it. The third push added to that. In less than a millisecond, the voltage on that coil didn't just double. It climbed exponentially. The tiny milliwatt pushes were stacking up. Milliwatts became watts. Watts became kilowatts. Kilowatts became megawatts. The energy built up so fast and so high that the air itself broke down. The 2 million volts was the coil releasing all that stacked up energy in one violent burst. The thing nobody tells you is that Tesla designed them to do this. This wasn't a flaw. It was the purpose. Back in 1899 in Colorado Springs, Tesla built his largest coil ever. It was a 142-foot-tall monster. He wanted to send power through the air. He famously turned it on, and it created 100-foot lightning bolts. It was so powerful, it pulled all the electricity from the El Paso Power Company, plunging the entire town into darkness and setting the generator on fire. That's what he was building. He wanted to make his coils ring with so much energy they could transmit it for miles. The difference? Tesla was using crude, noisy power sources. Rotary spark gaps, steam turbines. They were messy. Dr. Thorne's team, on the other hand, was using a 21st century solid-state signal generator. It sings a perfect, pure digital note. It was the most perfect, precise push, on the most perfect high-energy swing ever built. And it woke the device up in the most violent way possible. But the resonance alone doesn't explain the scale. Something else was helping. Spiderweb under the floor. That 2 million volt surge was terrifying, but it still doesn't make sense. How could 10 milliwatts stack up to megawatts? Even with perfect resonance, there's a problem of source. Where did all that power actually come from? It didn't come from the analyzer. The analyzer was just the trigger. It was the note, not the voice. The coil was pulling the power from somewhere else. This is where the story gets truly alarming. The coil had two hidden amplifiers. The first amplifier was the Earth itself. Tesla's biggest idea wasn't just wireless power through the air, it was wireless power through the ground. He didn't see the Earth as dirt. He saw it as a massive, perfectly spherical conductor. At Colorado Springs, he drove a 200-foot copper rod deep into the ground. He tuned his coil so that the current flowed down into the planet, traveled through it, and returned through the air. He was using the entire planet as part of his circuit. Fast forward to the New York lab. Dr. Thorne's team thought the coil was just sitting on a wooden crate. They thought it was isolated. They were wrong. What is a modern university building made of? Concrete and steel. What's inside that concrete? A massive web of steel rebar. What's running through all the walls and floors? Miles of copper water pipes. Miles of metal electrical conduits. And all of it is connected to a massive electrical grounding grid buried under the building for safety. The moment that the coil hit its resonant frequency, it didn't just vibrate. It coupled. It latched onto this massive hidden metal spiderweb. The rebar in the floor, the pipes in the walls, the very frame of the building, it all became part of the circuit. The coil wasn't just a coil anymore. It was an antenna plugged into a continent. The device was pulling ambient energy right out of the building's ground system. That's why the arc jumped 12 feet to a metal shelf. It was trying to complete the circuit. The building itself became the battery. But there was a second amplifier. And it's the part that makes this a truly modern nightmare. It was artificial intelligence. Ben, the grad student, didn't manually turn a dial to find the 700 kilohertz frequency. Nobody does that anymore. He used an automated testing platform. You see, modern analyzers are guided by machine learning, an AI algorithm. The AI's only job is to scan, hunt, and find the perfect resonance peak for maximum energy transfer. It's what they're designed for, and they are very, very good at it. A human technician from the 1980s might have taken hours to slowly find the sweet spot. He would have seen the voltage climbing and stopped. The AI? It found the peak in 30 seconds. It didn't just pass by the note, it locked on. The algorithm is designed to be persistent. It finds a peak and it pumps that signal, analyzing the feedback, making tiny adjustments in microseconds to make the connection even stronger. It was, in effect, teaching itself how to make the disaster worse, all in the name of getting a good reading. This was the perfect storm. An old-world device, designed with genius intuition, a modern building that acted as a giant hidden antenna, and a lightning-fast AI that found the trigger instantly. The team had triggered a perfect storm, and it could have been much, much worse. The threat we cannot see. The evacuation wasn't just for show. People hear lab evacuation and think of a fire drill. This was not a drill. To put it mildly, the team is lucky to be alive. The arc itself was dangerous, but the real threat was invisible. First, there was the air. That 2 million volt arc was literally ripping the air apart, a discharge that powerfully turns oxygen into ozone. In high concentrations, ozone is a toxic gas. It chemically burns the delicate tissue of your lungs. But that's not all. The air is almost 80% nitrogen. The arc also fuses nitrogen and oxygen into nitrogen oxides. When those gases mix with the moisture in your lungs, they form nitric acid. Think about what acid does. It dissolves things. The team would have been breathing in a gas that was actively dissolving the inside of their lungs. It's a terrifying thought, and it's why those high-voltage alarms aren't just suggestions. They are lifesavers. A few minutes in that room could have meant permanent damage. But the second danger was far scarier. It was locked inside the device itself. This coil was built in the 1920s and 30s. What did they use for high-voltage insulation back then? Oil. And what did they put inside high-voltage capacitors? PCBs. polychlorinated biphenyls. PCBs are some of the most toxic compounds ever made by man. They were banned in the 1970s because they cause massive neurological damage and other severe health problems. That ancient resonator was almost certainly filled with them. If that 2 million volt arc had continued, if it had overheated the device, it could have breached the insulation. It could have vaporized those PCBs. It would have filled that lab, and possibly the building's ventilation system, with a toxic fog. The evacuation order didn't just save the team from a shock, it saved them from a chemical event. This is the detail that has scientists terrified. This lab had one crate. What else is out there? Universities, military bases, and private collections all over the world are full of forgotten hardware. Cold War prototypes, early particle accelerators, industrial relics, all sitting in basements. And right now, teams are using the exact same AI-guided scanners to catalog them. This will happen again. Museums are scrambling to write new high-voltage protocols. How do you handle a sculpture that might actually be a live bomb, just waiting for the wrong radio frequency? But there's an upside. This accident changes everything. It proved in the most violent way possible that Tesla was right. Wireless power transfer on a massive scale is not a fantasy. The event shows what's possible when physics aligns perfectly. And now, the race is on. The past can supercharge the future. We don't need to repeat Tesla's mistakes, but we can build on his insights. Tesla's dream is being built, but the mystery of his own work is far from over. The Warden Cliff legacy. This event wasn't just a scare, it was a revelation. Engineers are now studying that 80-year-old coil, not as a weapon, but as a roadmap. Here's the thing, Tesla built that device by hand. He had no simulation software, no supercomputers, just his intuition and trial and error. And yet, the efficiency at storing energy of that coil is higher than many modern computer-aided designs. How? The precise geometry of the windings, the unique way he layered the insulation, the specific ratios of the primary to the secondary coil. He understood the physics at a level we are only just beginning to catch up with. Researchers are now reverse engineering it. That accident could unlock the next generation of real wireless power. This isn't just about charging your phone from across the room. We're talking about technology that could change the world. Defense labs like DARPA are already testing directed energy systems. They want to use focused microwave beams to charge drones while they are still in the air. No landing, no cables, just a beam of power. That's a Tesla idea. NASA is exploring space-based solar power. Giant orbital arrays that would capture sunlight, convert it to microwaves, and beam gigawatts of clean energy down to Earth. That is the Warden Cliff concept. Even the military is looking at this for something called ground-penetrating power. Imagine charging an underground bunker or a submarine without a physical cable. Just send a tuned, resonant frequency right through the rock and water. It sounds like science fiction, but the physics is now undeniable. The accident proved the connection is possible. The Air Force even has active denial systems. These are beams of millimeter waves that heat a person's skin from a distance. It's used for crowd control. It is literally a directed energy beam. This isn't fringe science. This is funded working technology. This is the stuff they admit to. The technology they put in a press release. But what about the technology they don't talk about? What if that crowd control beam could be tuned? What if, instead of just heating skin, it could match the resonant frequency of the human brain? Not to cook it, but to influence it. To project sensations, fear, apathy, even commands. This isn't just a theory. Scientists know that certain frequencies can affect mood. Now imagine a weapon that can project those frequencies at the speed of light. That's not a denial system. That's a control system. And this old coil, this forgotten relic, it just gave them the key. It showed how to achieve massive energy coupling by accident. Not just a little bit of power, a terrifying amount. Now they can learn to do it on purpose and safely. Of course, the public story is all about the benefits, and they sound incredible. This could lead to safer medical implants. Imagine a pacemaker that recharges wirelessly, right through the skin. No more surgeries to replace a battery. It could lead to electric vehicles that charge while driving on the highway, pulling energy from resonant pads buried in the road, an endless, clean commute. This is the future they are selling us. But what future are they building in the dark? That coil didn't just couple with a sensor. It coupled with the building, the steel rebar, the copper pipes, the electrical grid itself. What if they scale it up? Forget charging a car. What if they learn to couple with the entire power grid of a city or a country? Not an EMP blast that fries electronics. Something more subtle, a resonant pulse that simply turns it all off. A soft elimination. No damage, no explosions, just a continent plunged into darkness. And then there's the biggest theory of all, the one that keeps physicists awake at night. Nikola Tesla wasn't just interested in power. He was obsessed with the Earth itself. He believed he could use the planet's own ionosphere as a giant conductor. He talked about terrestrial resonance. What if this lab, by accident, proved he was right? What if that 30-second energy spike didn't just fill the building? What if it reached up and touched the ionosphere? This is the blueprint for weather control, not just seeding clouds. We are talking about creating and steering hurricanes, engineering droughts, a weapon that holds the world's food supply hostage. People watching this are probably wondering, did this really happen overnight? Is this true? Are we missing a key detail? The thing is, this event wasn't magic. It wasn't a hoax. It was physics. But it was physics on a scale we were never supposed to see. The lab in New York just happened to have the perfect wine glass, the Coil, and the perfect opera singer, the AI analyzer that could see the resonance forming, and the perfect concert hall, the building's metal-filled structure. The resonator is now in a specially built, shielded vault. They tell us it's for safety, to prevent another accident. But you don't build a vault like that for a pacemaker battery. You build it to protect a weapon, or a secret. The data from that 30-second event is being studied by teams around the world. The official teams, anyway. The real work is happening in black projects, far from any public oversight. Nikola Tesla's device, after 80 years of silence, has finally spoken. And it has given us both a terrifying warning and a brilliant high-voltage future. The only question is, who gets to choose which one we get? But what if this wasn't an accident? What if the AI knew what it was doing? Let us know your theory below. Like and subscribe for more.